One of the major problems with only having one class in a subject is that you tend to be told a basic overview of facts, and you aren't taught why what is said is true at all, or the methodology that is used to prove that it's true. For most people, history is what they were taught in high school or early grade school, or maybe a class they took in, college. These facts are complete and unchanging and are what happened. However, to a historian, history is a comparative study just like archaeology, biology, paleontology, and forensics. Unlike a history book or a novel or a memoir from that period, a historian has to look at a lot of different viewpoints and documents to figure out from all of them the best picture to fit together. This is because people are not very good at understanding history, remembering history, or passing on history because of several reasons, such as confirmation bias, prejudice, sensationalism, blind faith, rewritten memories, golden age syndrome, and limited perspective. For many centuries, it was taught in British schools that the Celts, Norse, and Germanic people were crude savages and barbarians when compared to the Romans. This is because the literature that they had was from a Roman perspective. The Romans were highly literate and rich from a lot of conquest, which allowed them to hire scribes. So to historians, the Romans won the history battle. However, more modern and comparative methods have begun to change how historians determine if what is said was true, or just spin and propaganda, or just plain wrong. They now view it more like a crime scene than blindly accept it. They have to ask who benefits. What motive would they have for writing this? How accurate are they in other matters that we can compare with the events they write? They then write a hypothesis paper, and after a peer review that works like a judge and jury weighing the evidence, then what is said will generally be accepted as sufficient evidence unless more evidence arises. Remember, folks, the peer review process is not like democracy where every schmo can vote. It's like a jury where every person who can vote has been presented with all the facts and can give an informed opinion. Sadly, there is no way to ensure that all voters are informed prior to going to the polls without eliminating civil liberties. Just like with every case, historians also have their forensic specialists, archaeologists. Many times several sources will agree on a topic, but after the archaeologist is done, they will realize that no one got it right. Take the Celts. Discussed as bloody savages with primitive technology by the Romans, archaeologists have discovered that the Celts had wooden roads, very well upkept, lots of gold from their mines, a great trade route all the way to Greece, and even a calendar that calculates both the solar and lunar calendar, something that was never done until possibly the advent of the modern computer. If you get the chance, watch Barbarians by Terry Jones. It is ridiculously informative. So why weren't the Romans more accurate on what happened? Well, it turns out at a certain point the Celts had invaded Rome and plundered it. It was like their 9/11 because Rome was considered a holy city. So Rome put all of its resources into their military, and after many long and bloody battles completely defeated the Celts. They not only severely plundered and wrecked their infrastructure, they also slaughtered almost all of their oral historians and learned people, the Druids, to prevent them from retaining their identity and returning to their former greatness. Anytime someone wants to control a people, you kill or imprison their learned people. Every tyrant has done this. Many times history is taken from stories meant for entertainment and not for actual fact. Most of the ideas we have of the Middle Ages are all wrong. The noble knight, the damsel in distress, the dumb miserable peasant are all stereotypes that were rarely true. Why do we think that though? Because during the Victorian era, fiction began reaching a high point as books became more affordable to the common person. People began writing idealized fiction about the medieval times, which made for awesome fiction, but that was the problem. People could not separate fiction from the fact. Leave It to Beaver has had the same effect on people with the advent of television. Watch Medieval Lives by Terry Jones, also amazing. Yes, Terry Jones is a member of Monty Python. Christians look at the Bible as the end-all, be-all of truth and history. However, when held up by a jury of peer reviewers, weighing all evidence, it comes up laughingly lacking in any evidence. There is no geological evidence for a great flood, no evidence whatsoever for a mass migration out of Egypt at all. With that many people wandering the Sinai Peninsula, you would find a lot of waste and rubbish, pots, dead animals, and dead people, but we have found nothing at all. The same is true for the invasion of the Promised Land, and believe me, the church has spent enormous amounts of money throughout the centuries to try and find evidence. No evidence of a mass attack, however, we have found evidence for a mass slave revolt in the Canaanite lands during that period, and the story of their God bringing them out of bondage may have had some truth to it, but then got switched via generations of oral tradition to the Egyptians, who held Israeli lands at one time as territory, but never enslaved them all in Egypt. Political spin is an important part of history as well, as whoever has the money and power to write and copy most books in their favor, and burn or let fall to pieces books that disagree with them, gets to hold what people believe and see as true. Some biblical historians believe that the story of David was political spin by his descendant Hezekiah, who was the first king to have mass literacy. He made Saul look evil and David look chosen by God to maintain his own house's legitimacy on the throne. Hezekiah also did a religious cleansing of the pagan gods in his reign and claimed that people had fallen away from God. However, archaeologists and historians can find no evidence that Palestine was ever monotheistic prior to Hezekiah. If Hezekiah could eliminate the worship of all gods but his, he would hold the monopoly on religion, giving him and his priests much more power in the land. His ancestor, King Josiah, used the same trick when dealing with the Assyrians who threatened Israel. In the biblical passage, God smote them and they died. In the Assyrian account, Josiah agreed to pay a hefty tribute to save his own skin. Unlike the Egyptians, who were known to redact and manipulate history in their favor, which Christians use to cite why the Exodus is not mentioned in Egyptian history, the Assyrians were strict about their record-keeping and recorded every triumph and defeat. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and it's pretty likely that the Assyrians would have recorded something that amazing and steered clear of Israel from then on. Christians only study the Bible and nothing else written at that time, which gives their book unfair weight in the belief debate. The Bible even fails in terms of the New Testament. Christians cite Josephus as giving an account of the existence of Jesus, but language scholars also have developed understandings and methodologies to assess this. They even have calculations for the rate at which language changes, much like scientists have extremely precise calculations of mutation rates which they can use to trace past ancestors. The Josephus text has been found to be a very obvious forgery from a few hundred years after Josephus died. To an early church scholar who wanted to believe and didn't know the language very well, the document would appear to be a gold mine, but to a modern well-versed linguist, it would be like a person claiming to have found a lost Shakespeare play, but written in Ebonics. The Bible isn't even the authority on what the majority of early Christians believed, but it was just the most popular books read in the churches at the time when the Bible was canonized, assuming the books didn't go against the agreed orthodoxy of the Council of Nicaea, which relied on a vote and negotiation to decide what the church believed. The Nag Hammadi text really opened up our understanding of pre-Nicene doctrine with the Gnostic text and variations in the texts of the Bible. The Dead Sea Scrolls are touted as being completely 100% accurate with our current Bible, but that is a blatant mistruth that any scholar and historian will quickly shoot down. The way a normal person views history is a set of facts based on what they've heard and what jives with their current mindset. A historian views history as a crime scene detective with forensics and various witnesses who may or may not have accurate or truthful information, have reasons to lie, or maybe just have a bad memory or limited viewpoint.